So I'm just beginning to remove this fuel tank. It's now fully drained. I'm gonna start off by removing the return feed from the injectors here from the tank. I've started loosening it already, so it's nearly finished here. I'll just pop the last bit off by hand. So that's the return feed pipe disconnected from the tank itself. Now I just need to get the Petcock / primer mechanism, both pipes removed off that, and then the tank should lift off. So as you can see there, I've now got both fuel pipes that come out of the primer mechanism here removed. So the tank has 3 hold down bolts. They are also removed, 2 at the front there and 1 closer to the driver's side above the dash panel. So those 3 bolts are already removed. So I'll try and get the camera set up and lift this tank off. So I've now got this tank removed from the Dexta, and I'm going to be giving it a bit of a swill around and then empty out the last residual fuel that's left in the tank. And then once I've emptied the worst of the sludge out, I'll refill it again with some more diesel and swill the tank as best I can, and then try and get a look inside to see what's left in there. Well, looking at that, I'm really pleased that I have emptied this tank out and got it off the machine, because I think we're going to get another 2 or 3 swirls of that sort of colour. Really pleased to get that emptied. So we'll just have a quick look inside this tank, see if we can get the camera to focus at all. Pretty difficult to get the camera to focus in, but as you can see there is a lot of grime still in the bottom of this tank. So I'm just giving this fuel tank a good swill out now with some more diesel. Well, that's the residue that's been coming out the tank after emptying the worst of the fuel out there. There's a lot of rust, a lot of crud from dirty fuel tanks over the years going into this one, I suspect. And inside the tank is still going to need a lot of work. Hard to get a shot of, but you can kind of make out the heaps of crap still in there. So I've just removed this Petcock here, and as you can see, the internal tank filter here is completely sludged up, and again I'm amazed that this was even getting fuel flow to run. Absolutely covered in spaff. So I have now removed the internal filter gauze off the top of the Petcock, as it was completely blocked and knackered anyway, so I'll be replacing that. I may be replacing this whole Petcock as well, I'm not sure yet. I need to test it once I've done the cleaning of the tank. So to clean this tank out, I'm gonna use some petrol and some chain and shake the hell out of it to try and agitate the rust that's built up on the edges of the tank. Not really convinced it is all rusty. I think there's a lot of just fuel residue from years of sitting there with half a tank of fuel. So it'll do it the world of good to just get this chain shook around inside, and I'll try and get a video of what comes out in the end. Just try and get a shot of what's inside this tank before I get started. So this is a nice clean chain, obviously don't want to be putting any more dirt in there. So after giving that a bit of a vigorous shake, let's have a look and see what the inside's looking like now. It's hard to get the camera to focus. Still looking a bit grimy, but certainly seems to have cleaned up a lot of the loose stuff. See the chain in there that I've been using to agitate everything.
So after the 4th or 5th swirl now, I'm going to try and get a shot with the camera. It's pretty hard with the torch at the same time, but as you can see, there's still a bit of rust on the actual tank itself, but overall the loose particles seem to have been dislodged now. Certainly doesn't look like very clean petrol anymore, so it's safe to say that's removed quite a bit of crud from in the tank. I think I'll do this a few more times till it starts coming out clear, and then I'll be a bit more happy with how the tank is before we'll get it back on the machine. So, while I wait for a few parts that are on order to arrive, I'm going to go about the process of removing the roll bar framework. Looking at it, there's only 2 bolts hold the roll bars to the rear axle, and those same bolts also hold the mud guards on, as well as the roll bar. So once they're removed, I will be able to give the wings mud guards a lick of paint and clean down and paint the roll bar framework as well. So I've actually managed to just wobble the arm out of place there. You can see it just walks out of place without having to remove that handbrake bracket. So that's a bonus. Now I can just remove this anti-roll bar. Gonna need 2 hands. So that's the first anti-roll bar removed. It's got this spacer plate between the bar and the axle, which I'm not convinced is stock. So I'll be checking that out before everything goes back together.
as putting the upper half of the roll cage frame into place was very tight, because I don't think the uprights are parallel. Axle doesn't look in too bad condition, and while I've got these mud guards off and roll bars off, it's a good time to get in and clean the back side of the wheels, clean the axle. So I've got these roll cage, anti-roll bar mounting brackets removed from the Dexter. As you can see, these have been painted previously. Like I say, about 10 years ago the previous owner did a partial touch up slash paint job, I think, more than anything, looking at the filters and that. So these have had a lick of paint, but I'm going to just buzz them off with the wire wheel, and then they'll be getting painted orange to match the top half of the roll bar. So I'll come back once I've got this paint removed and see how we're getting on. So I've now got these upright supports cleaned up and removed of all the loose paint. Now this one is the handbrake side, and I'm not sure how well you'll pick it up on the video, but both sides of this tube have been dented inwards with, I presume, a large hammer. So this tubing is actually too narrow for the upper half of the roll cage to slide all the way down into place. So this piece of box section here is the same size as the middle guide section of the upper roll cage, and now, as you can see, I'm actually able to slide that a decent way down, where previously I could only get it in about that far. So to be able to open up the box section internally again, I've had to expand this surface here by using 3 chisels to act as a wedge. So I'm putting them 2 short ones in like that, then driving a longer chisel in from above to widen the box section back out to allow this smaller box to slide in as far as it's going to need to go for the top roll bar. So making progress, but I just thought I'd share that tip with you guys if you had a similar problem and would like to use the original box section without having to replace this section here. So we'll see how we get on, but it's working so far.
So after getting some paint on a few of the body panel pieces and this roll cage framework, I have removed the original handbrake latch mechanism, and as you can see it's quite rusted out. The teeth are pretty worn, so there's not so good of a step to stop the handbrake on anymore. So I've bought this replacement part that came from Agriline, and as you can see the teeth are in a much better condition. The profile is somewhat the same, but as you can see the new teeth are actually slightly taller than the original ones, but I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue. Maybe something that they've altered deliberately, but what I am going to have to do is, when you lay the parts over each other there, this bottom tab is obviously, this is obviously a handbrake mechanism off another type of tractor that's close enough to be suitable for the Dexter, but it needs the bottom shortened and a second hole drilled into it there. But that's out, so I'm pretty pleased to get that piece and be able to replace it on my machine. So as you can now see, I've trimmed the bracket down and drilled the second hole. Now the second hole that I've drilled, I drilled at 8mm, and these holes that were originally in the bracket are 10, so there is a little bit of adjustment on it like the original one did have, as the front hole on the original one was slotted. So that should give us enough adjustment just to get the handbrake mechanism set properly. So I'm just back down at the Dexter now. Got the stabilizer brackets in place with the mud guards and roll bar bracket with the new handbrake mechanism fitted, but the handbrake mechanism is going to need a little spacer between the mechanism and the upright here, just to get it to sit in the right position, I think, because when it's tightened right up it was pushing the handbrake lever too far this way. There's a bit of a better look at these new stabilizer brackets mounted with the taper towards the front, so that the pins line up with the lower link pins. So after giving these wings a little lick of paint as well, got them back on the machine just so they're out the way in the shed. Happy with how it's starting to look.